It's quite evident to anyone that Bitcoin is the most decentralized crypto asset in the world. The mining network is spread all around the world. The holders are spread all around the world. It has the most diffuse set of developers, the most diffuse set of holders, the most diffuse set of miners, the most diffuse set of corporate actors, the most diversified set of regulators and policymakers. It's the best known brand. Things like Ethereum have a 10-year roadmap and they have 40 things on the roadmap. Well, Bitcoin doesn't have a roadmap. Bitcoin's already done. Arguably, Bitcoin was effectively done a decade ago, maybe more than a decade ago, right? On January 3rd, 2009, it was substantially done. We'll keep acquiring Bitcoin forever. Think of us like a real estate development company. Maybe if you were the first company to go public in Manhattan and you were buying up Manhattan real estate and developing Manhattan property and the year was 1750, you just keep doing it for hundreds of years. So you're not really selling, you're just buying. So we'll keep developing Bitcoin. We see it as cyber Manhattan. It's digital property. So we will keep acquiring it, and then we will use that as collateral in order to launch other businesses. Like we're now the largest issuer of convertible bonds in the United States marketplace. And we just launched our first convertible preferred stock. So those are two examples of securities that are collateralized by Bitcoin that are unique to the market. We'll keep doing things like that as Bitcoin increases in price and as we see new opportunities.
What do you think Bitcoin's price in this cycle?
Really focus on cycles. I don't believe in cycles. I think that the idea of cycles is something that came out of the first 10 or 15 years of the crypto world. I think we moved into the era of institutional adoption, and most of the capital flowing in the market is coming from big institutions, and it's equity based. So BlackRock and the ETFs have bought more than $100 billion worth of Bitcoin over the past year. They're buying far in excess of the amount of Bitcoin produced by miners. So I think that, when we went through the last halving, the amount of Bitcoin being mined and being sold became second order compared to the demand for Bitcoin. We're in a different regime. I think that it's kind of distracting to think about cycles. It's people trying to time the market, and they're always wrong. Like if you try to time the market for when you should buy Manhattan real estate in the last 300 years, like maybe you would just talk yourself into not buying it. But I mean, isn't it correct that you should have bought it at any price, any time in the last 300 years? The same with Tokyo real estate. If you were trying to time the market in Apple stock for the past 40 years, the mistake would be just not to buy it, or Google or the like. So what you have is you have a dominant digital monetary network. It's going up forever. I think that Bitcoin's going to keep going up on average 29% a year for the next 21 years. So that base case puts it at 13 million a coin in the year 2045. You can buy it for 1/100th of that. What difference does it make whether you buy it at 95,000 or 105,000 or 92,000 or 108,000, right? That's there are no traders that are getting rich. The traders are just playing in the market. The people, the richest people in the world, the Bernard Arnaults, the Jeff Bezos, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, the reason they're rich is because they have a dominant digital monopoly in some asset, and they just hold it and they don't trade it. I think that the more people that join the Bitcoin network, the higher the price of Bitcoin goes and the more powerful the network becomes. And so everyone benefits. So I expect that we'll go from half a dozen companies on the Bitcoin standard to dozens to hundreds to thousands. Right? Your choice is you can either take your capital and invest it in bonds that have an after-tax yield of 3% or 2%, or you can take your capital and buy Bitcoin, with a 30 to 60% yield, 10x better. I think that companies are rational over time. I think that they'll all start to think about this. And I think that the more companies that join the Bitcoin standard, the better it is for every Bitcoin holder and every company on the Bitcoin standard. So it's a virtuous cycle.
I read some articles that you said that your personal holding Bitcoin will be burned after your death, right? Why not leave them to your family and children or to some donation?
I think with regard to charity, you have to make sure that if you have a lot of resources, that the resources you contribute go to the right cause. So if you simply burn your private keys, that's the same as making a pro rata donation to everyone in the Bitcoin network. That's very fair.
Yeah,
it's very equitable, right? So everyone that shares your values, if you believe in Bitcoin, and if you invested a certain amount in Bitcoin, you get a donation from the person that burns their private keys. So you're supporting people that believe in the same values you believe in, immediately, irrevocably, forever. But if I were to take the money and I were to give it to a charity, then 100 years after I'm dead, the person that runs the charity might spend it on something I don't agree with.
Yeah.
For example, right now, a lot of times people criticize Rockefeller because some Rockefeller charity supports something that they don't agree with. But Rockefeller's dead and he didn't even agree with it. Like Rockefeller had very different views, but so a guy that's been dead for 100 years is being criticized because his money is doing something in society that people disagree with. That's the danger of leaving your money to a foundation or a trust. I think, like, there are a lot of ways to go about it. You can either spend it while you're alive. You can have a very, very tight set of guidelines. If you have family and you want to give it to your family, then maybe that makes sense. But I think that Satoshi set an example that is very admirable. Satoshi had 1 million Bitcoin, and then the Bitcoin never moved. Satoshi basically burns the private keys, disappears forever. And that is a contribution of 5% of the value of the network to everybody else for all of eternity.
Yeah.
That strikes me as being very charitable.
I remember you once said maybe banks are safer for common people to store their Bitcoin than self-custody. Yeah, and it's a relatively controversial, right? Do you still hold this opinion now?
I think that there are different people should custody their Bitcoin different ways. I think some people are quite competent to self-custody and they need to. I think other people are not competent. I mean, is your 3-year-old child competent to self-custody their Bitcoin? Is an 80-year-old that can't actually type or read the keyboard, if they're blind, are they competent to custody their Bitcoin? It seems quite obvious, right? If you run a trust fund for unborn children, are the unborn children competent to custody their Bitcoin? Who should custody?
Yeah.
There are some companies where it's illegal for them to self-custody.
Yeah.
There are institutions like, do you really want the mayor of your town to hold all the Bitcoin of the people in the city? What if the mayor steals it?
Yeah.
What if the mayor gets kidnapped and murdered?
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the early days, people learned that self-custody was important. And I think we had a lot of crypto cowboys and fly-by-night operations, but there's a big difference between Mt. Gox and JP Morgan. I mean, there's a difference between a large bank with tens of thousands of cybersecurity or compliance professionals and very precise procedures versus 2 people that set up a crypto exchange. And so I don't think there's a right answer. I think that if you live in a war zone, if you live in Iraq or Korea and you don't self-custody, you probably lose your money.
Yeah.
But I think that there are many institutions and groups that they can't buy it without a custodian. So I think that a rational view is some people should self-custody, some people should do it by memorizing, some people should do it with a seed phrase on a metal plate, some people should do it with a hardware wallet, some people should do it with an institutional custodian in the country, some people should do it with a custodian not in their own country. Some people should actually buy a derivative like IBIT. Like if you live in Hong Kong and it's illegal to buy Bitcoin other than through an ETF and you want to buy Bitcoin, then you should buy it through an ETF because your choice is be poor
it's
or
legal.
buy the security, right? So I think that it comes down to the type of entity.
Yeah.
Right? Is it a city? Is it a charity? Is it a family? Is it a trust? Is it an individual? I think the question is, what's your time horizon? Is it 100 years? Is it 1,000 years? Is it a year? Is it 5 years? Are you going to be dead in 3 years? Right? It comes down to how uncertain is your environment. Do you live in Manhattan? Or do you live in Ukraine or Afghanistan? Do you live in Africa? What country in Africa? I think all of those things matter. And then it also comes down to, are you physically and mentally capable? Some people literally can't type. Some people can't actually read the words on their phone. Some people don't have a phone, right? So sometimes in the crypto world, they think everybody's a 20-something male. And if you're a male between ages of 20 and 40, you have a very particular view of the world. Well, there's a lot of people in the world that aren't a male between the age of 20 and 40. Some of them are cancer patients, 85 years old in a hospital, as different. So I think that everybody everybody has to make that decision. And if you start to become too orthodox or too doctrinaire, you actually cripple the growth of the network. And I think it's in our best interest to embrace all types of entities everywhere in the world, in all circumstances. Anybody buying any asset which is backed by Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form is benefiting the Bitcoin network.
Yeah.
And I think the goal is to grow the network. I think it's quite evident to anyone that Bitcoin is the most decentralized crypto asset in the world. The mining network is spread all around the world. The holders are spread all around the world. It has the most diffuse set of developers, the most diffuse set of holders, the most diffuse set of miners, the most diffuse set of corporate actors, the most diversified set of regulators and policymakers. It's the best known brand. And it's the most stable, right? It is the protocol that is least in flux, right? I mean, things like Ethereum have a 10-year roadmap and they have 40 things on the roadmap. Well, Bitcoin doesn't have a roadmap. Bitcoin's already done. Arguably, Bitcoin was effectively done a decade ago, maybe more than a decade ago, right? On January 3rd, 2009, it was substantially done. So what you want is a protocol that is broadly distributed, that is mathematically complete, logically complete, that has global consensus. And there's one asset that has global consensus as being logically complete, and that's Bitcoin.